All right, let's talk about one of the most important and, kind of invisible technologies that makes our entire digital world go round. Compression. Seriously, it's the unsung hero, the secret sauce that lets the internet actually work the way we expect it to.
I mean, really, stop and think about it for a second. How can you binge watch a whole season of a show in beautiful high def without waiting forever? Or how can you send that massive vacation photo album to your family in like 2 seconds? Well, the answer to all of that is the clever magic of compression.
To really get why compression is so important, first we got to understand the problem it's trying to solve. And that problem is what I like to call the digital space squeeze. Every single photo you take, every video, it's all data. And that data, it adds up fast. If we didn't have a solution, these enormous files would just clog up our hard drives, max out our phones, and make the internet slow to a crawl. We've all been there, right? That frustration is real. So what do we do about it? Well, we use this absolutely brilliant solution called compression. And it really is just that. It's the big shrink for all our digital stuff. So basically, compression is just a whole bunch of really smart techniques that are all designed to do one thing: make a file smaller. This makes it way easier to store and a whole lot faster to send. But how it does that? Well, that's where the genius comes in. The best way to picture it is like this. Imagine you have this huge box filled with all your digital things. Compression is like a master packer who comes in, reorganizes everything, throws out the useless packaging, and somehow fits it all into a box that's just a tiny fraction of the original size. And the results? They can be absolutely staggering. We're talking, it's not uncommon to see a 90% reduction in a file size. All of a sudden, a huge 100 megabyte file becomes a super quick 10 megabytes. That right there is why you can stream movies and download games so fast. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. It's not as simple as just one shrink button. When we compress a file, we're actually making a choice. It's like a fork in the road, with two very different paths you can take, and each one has its own pros and cons. So let's start with the first path. I call this one the Lossy gamble. And yeah, that name gives you a pretty big hint about what's going on here. Okay, so lossy compression is incredibly clever. It knows that our eyes and ears aren't perfect, so it strategically throws away little bits of information, like super high-pitched sounds we can't really hear, or tiny color changes we'd never notice, all to make the file way, way smaller. And this is the gamble part. Once that data is gone, it's gone for good. You can't get it back. It's a one-way street, which is why there's always a little, and sometimes a noticeable, drop in the overall quality. So let's break down the trade-off. The huge plus, you get a much smaller file, which is amazing for streaming and for sharing. The big minus, you lose a little bit of that perfect original quality, and that change is permanent. And you use this method every single day, probably without even thinking about it. That music you stream as an MP3, the photos you post as JPEGs, the videos you watch in MP4 format, yep, they all rely on lossy compression to be small enough to work.
Okay, so that was path one. Now let's check out the other side of the coin, the lossless promise. And this one, well, it takes a totally different approach to shrinking things down.
So instead of throwing data away, lossless compression is more like a super organized librarian. It looks through the file, finds all the repeating patterns, and just creates a little shorthand for them. You know, kind of like saying write the letter A 100 times instead of actually writing out A 100 times. Not a single piece of data is deleted. And that's the promise. The whole process is completely reversible. When you open the file back up, the computer just reads the shorthand and perfectly reconstructs the original bit for bit. It's like taking a puzzle apart and putting it back together perfectly, with no pieces missing every single time. So what's the trade-off here? Well, the huge advantage is you get zero loss in quality. The file is a perfect, pristine copy of the original. The downside, though, because you're keeping every last bit of data, the file size doesn't get nearly as small as it does with Lossy. You see this method being used anytime quality is king. Zip files, for example, have to be lossless. You can't have bits of your software just missing, right? High-quality PNG images and those FLAC audio files for serious music lovers also use lossless to make sure every single detail is preserved. Okay, so we have two paths, the small but slightly imperfect lossy and the perfect but bigger lossless. This brings us to the most important question. How do you choose your file's fate? It really just all comes down to what you need it for. If you need a really small file and a tiny hit in quality is no big deal, like for streaming a video or sharing a photo online, then Lossy is absolutely your best friend. But if every single bit of data is crucial, like in a text document or a professional photograph, then Lossless is the only way to go. And really, that's the key thing to remember. Neither one of these is better than the other. They're just different tools for different jobs. And now that you know the difference, you can actually make the right choice for what you're trying to do. So that's the question I'm going to leave you with. As you go about your day and you're saving files and sending things, you now know what's happening under the hood. So the next time you go to save something, what's it going to be? Will you prioritize speed or perfection? The fate of your file, well, it's in your hands.